So let's first open it up to last week's class, or rather the last week of practice. How did things go? Any reports or questions?
As usual, with all the inquiries that you give, is this true? Can I know that this is true? Was extremely powerful and helpful for me. It came up a lot. Like so many times, I would be caught in the grip of a thing, and I would just be like, "Oh, is this true?" Makes things much looser and more fluid and more just easier to deal with the hard stuff. So I really, really love that inquiry, and I need like a pocketbook of all the inquiries so I can remember them. But
Yeah,
whatever, it's like the week's homework, it sticks in my mind and it comes up a lot, and it shows me new aspects of my experience. So yeah, really love that one.
good report. Yeah. Like the inside of emptiness is just simply that everything's fabricated, or even that things are not separate from mind. And so this completely natural, and in a sense blameless inclination of the mind to be like, oh yeah, I got it right, and like, oh yeah, this is reliable. Like we're just like catching that midway before it grips us, and just we're not even trying to push that away, because like thank God it's that way. Like life would be so much more complicated if we didn't run on autopilot most of the time. But we're just putting attention on that, and then just seeing how, oh, okay, this is all fabricated. Any other reports? How did it go? Anything interesting? Anything unexpected? Any confusion? I hope lots and lots of confusion. That's the point.
I did some other inquiry stuff this week, but I did remember your point from last week's lecture and practice. Can I rest in this confusion? And I remember yesterday doing some walking meditation and kind of pondering if there is, or yes, I think there is, but what is the distinguishing factors between kind of a sense of no self and then kind of the full non-duality, non-dualism, and what are the differences and how can I experience that? And at some point I just noticed getting stuck in certain thought patterns and cycles, and then I was reminded of your comment, can I rest in that confusion? And that was,
Yeah.
so I switched to doing that, and I mean, no further insights came from that, but still it was just good to kind of ease into it a bit and just let go a bit of the striving. So yeah, I had quite a good meditation based on that.
Yeah, good report, Hans. Anything else coming up for people? Okay, let's assume not. Okay, so I just want to go over some just like kind of things that I think are kind of basic about the practice before we get into this whole death meditation thing. Just kind of reminders. So in Unified Mindfulness Shinzen system, they talk about rhythms of practice, and so I'm just simply going to remind you of the different types of practice, and I think all of them are good. So first is retreat. So I just want to talk about retreat for a little bit. So I strongly advise retreat. Retreat is great. Obviously, most of us can only do home retreat right now. And then I just thought to make this comment that all the different forms of practice are not interchangeable. They're actually different. And it's not like retreat is just like a whole bunch of formal sitting at home. It's actually different and has different benefits. And just like sitting at home, kind of in the midst of your daily life, have benefits that can't be had on retreat. And in that same way, informal kind of daily life practice, like micro hits, background practice, have benefits that formal, let's say, retreat practice or formal seated practice at home don't have. So I just kind of wanted to remind people of that. And then kind of the way I see that is that the more that you diversify your practice and the more varied your practice is in certain respects, the deeper the practice goes into the body or gets massaged into the body mind. One of my teachers always strongly recommended, meditating. Like if you have a little bit of insomnia, meditating in the middle of the night, meditating before you go to bed, meditating right when you get up, meditating when you're really stressed in the middle of the day. And and so like you're taking advantage of like the diverse, let's say, chemistries of the body or mental states, etc. And each time offers a special opportunity for the practice. And then I had another teacher who, quoting Namgyal Rinpoche, who was a very famous Canadian Lama, he said that you awaken much, much faster if you, for example, meditate in all 4 canonical postures: seated, standing, walking, and lying down. And then if you just simply meditate in one posture, for example, seated. So in a sense, the overarching point here is be diversified with your practice and practice in any different way you can. And the more the merrier. Okay, so that was something I want to mention. Also, another aspect of the practice is teaching, right? So getting teaching and also giving teaching. Shinzen recommends to teach anything that you know about the practice. And I basically agree. I think as long as there's humility, that it's fine. And something that I've learned over the last year of really starting to teach formally is that, like, wow, the depth of learning when you teach is like many-fold greater than when you just simply learn in a more passive way. And also, I think that there's another aspect of when you learn in order to teach, I think is actually more beneficial to you because you have a kind of slightly beneficent orientation. And it's the kind of ideal way to be learning in the moment. It's like, the way that you kind of lean in and pay attention. If you have it in the back of your mind, I'm going to learn this in order to teach others, I think is beneficial. And then just some other notes on teaching and Sangha. I strongly recommend, participating with Sangha. And, I think also online is great, clearly, but then in person is good. And this is a very famous quote of the Buddha's. Ananda, the Buddha's attendant, went to the Buddha and said, "Hey, Buddha, I've been contemplating, and surely 50% or half of the holy life is the friends you keep." And the Buddha said, "No, Ananda, the entirety of the holy life is the friends you keep." So I just thought to mention that. Also, I see that there's a hand raised. Let's go ahead and, Tom, did you have something? Go ahead and speak.
Well, I had one comment about my practice, or like
Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
as well, in regards to diversifying your practice. Something I kind of started experimenting with is I do Tai Chi normally, and I started to kind of do inquiry through the medium of movement in Tai Chi, and like asking what is rest in the context of the Tai Chi. And I just thought that was really interesting and a very interesting exploration that was very fruitful, which I just wanted to share. And then
I've been doing that with my yoga practice too. It's been really
good. It's good. I like it. And then also about teaching, like one thing that occurs to me, I don't know who said it. I think it might have been Jesus. But like the blind cannot lead the blind, So that's something that occurs to me when considering maybe teaching some stuff. Like, I don't think I have any form of high attainment or anything, really. So if I go out and teach people, what if I teach people poorly? And like, would that maybe hurt people and have bad consequences? Um, how would you respond to that?
I think that's a good question, actually. So, okay, a couple things. Let me address what you were saying earlier about doing the inquiry while doing like movement meditation. Man, fantastic. I think movement meditation is like big time underrated. Uh, I think it's great. So that sounds fantastic. Strongly endorse what you're doing. And then about the teaching, I think your concern is legitimate. I think that, yeah, I think your concern is legitimate and people should really think twice about it. But then, like, I think there's another level of like, there's a certain way that to reflect on this that the teaching happens whether you want it to or not. Like just even being a role model. Like one of my teachers used to say, um, you're in a kind of in a sense passive. The most awakened person in the room is always teaching everybody else on some level, even if it's just through silence. And so, I think there can be a very passive kind of way of teaching, which is also important. Um, and then, I think, geez, this is just kind of how I've thought about it. Is I think that there's an issue around like truth in advertising. Like, for example, one of my I can't remember the term. I can't remember, but I was just gonna, not an admonition, but or disclaimers that I'm gonna make before teaching this death meditation thing. I like know nothing about this. I just thought it was interesting. I put it on the calendar. I wanted to learn about it, and now I'm just gonna simply read uh, like a guided meditation written by somebody else. So like I think as long as you're like honest about what you know, etc., then that's fine. And then I think also you run into trouble when there's like identification and like identification with the teachings, identification with like the status, and then not to perseverate on it, but then also I don't want to like pathologize like concerns with status. Like people are concerned with status. I am. I mean, and I think that's something we got to look at in ourselves and not totally pathologize. Um, those are just some random thoughts. Was that speaking to your questions and comments?
Yeah, that. Thank you.
In my experience, starting with a few friends, a local meditation group here where we live in Portland, and we ended up putting it on the Meetup website, and there's been a lot of interest there, like 150 people in that group, I think, and probably 10 to 12 people that come to our weekly sit. And it's like Pragmatic Dharma is the name of the group, Portland Pragmatic Dharma. And it's really changed my life and my practice to have this group, to have like a group of friends that like speak the same language and have the same understandings and read the same books and want to talk about it. And it's totally peer led. There's no teacher. It's just people coming and sharing what they know. And it's such great learning, such great like camaraderie and not feeling alone, because meditation can be such a, isolating endeavor. And then you have thoughts and insights and ways of relating to the world that most people can't relate with at all, so it feels very isolating to not be able to talk about those things. But then finding a group of people who are like-minded is so beneficial and helpful, and like it really changed my life and made it from like kind of like me against the world thing to like me helping in the world and being with the world. So it's like a really big shift for me to start this group with my friends, and I love it. And every week I'm always looking forward to it and excited about it. And I also think there's a lot of truth to what Cedric was saying around like people learning passively, even without a formal teacher, just by talking about it in a group. And like people in the group quickly catch up to the like most realized member of the group, because you just kind of like absorb the wisdom passively somehow in some magical way, or non-magical.
Sure.
Yeah, so definitely agree with that. I'm curious though, Cedric, what you think. So my first 6 or so years on the path was in the Goenka Vipassana tradition, and they like strongly admonish against doing multiple techniques. And like on the intake form to go on the retreat, they make you say if you've done any other retreats, and then the assistant teacher, or any other techniques. And then the assistant teacher calls you and kind of shames you for it.
Sure.
And and they're like, if you want to get water, only dig one well. If you keep digging multiple wells, then you'll never get there. My personal experience with that is that it's bullshit. My practice got so much better when I started diversifying and learning different sets of skills, and being fluid in my practice so that it could be responsive to what I was feeling. But I also think at the same time, like I got a lot out of doing body scans for 6 years. So I'm curious what you think about like some traditions being like only do this one thing forever, or
Yeah.
even in Tibetan Buddhism, like the 10,000, repeating the same thing 10,000 times and all that.
Sure. Oh yeah. Okay. So starting with the whole Goenka thing, like, hmm, I mean, I think it's really interesting. Um, I mean, obviously, Goenka is an Asian person, like, from Burma, in Indo-Burmese, and the psychology there is just simply different, and that
Yeah.
there's less self-agency and less individualism. And to be clear, I actually think that the hyper-individualism of the West is actually problematic and out of whack slightly. Um, but I also think, like for my own taste, I wouldn't and I couldn't adopt a more like traditional Asian approach either. I'm a Westerner, and that informs how I come at it. So I think that it like works for different people. Um, ugh, I think it's really tough, honestly. I think that like, and it has so much to do with like trust. Do you trust your teacher? Like, yeah, I think it's really complicated. I definitely don't want to like kind of jettison that whole approach entirely. I think it has a value, and kind of like from a more almost like dialectical way of looking at it is like going from extreme to extreme is like on a certain sense ideal, because it's like go and like have this like narrow view where it's like, oh, this is the right way, and then do it like with a fanaticism, and then reject that fanatically, and then go over to another fanatical like pluralist position, and then explore that and really know it.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
exactly what I did. Totally.
yeah, and then you can actually appreciate the two positions. And then almost like something that's coming up for me is this like, I think once the relationship with concepts loosens up, and it's kind of said like the relationship with concept loosen up, but it's actually better to say that when reactivity around concepts decreases, then you can have like a concept and like fully appreciate like this very hierarchical fundamentalist uh, position like that the Goenka takes, and it'd be like, okay, well, let's just play around with this and have a good time right now. Like I've done like 70 days on different levels of Goenka retreats. I love them, and also at times, like when like reobservation plus something else hits, I'm like, screw these people. This is fucking terrible. What they're doing is totally insane. And so whatever, so whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, totally resonate with how you look at it, and that's been my experience too. And it's like that irrational perspective where
Yeah.
different and often conflicting viewpoints can be useful and applicable in different situations, and having fluidity
Yeah.
between them is really good.
And I think another related point is like, so I think as things deepen, the belief that there can be a coherence, like a rational coherence, starts to fall away, or rather, a clinging to a need that there be a rational coherence falls away. And it's like, I think related to that point is like, I think one of the metrics of like adult maturity is like the ability to hold opposing viewpoints at the same time. So also, I think that there's a part of us that we don't even need to figure it out. Like let's just say, if you're at a Goenka retreat, make the most of it. If you're at your pragmatic Dharma group, make the most of it, right? So that's, I think, another thing. And then going back to what you're saying, I really agree with what you're saying about, like, this local sangha and all that. Like, the more, like, in a sense, the more, how to put this, like, the more holistic you can make your practice, the better. And I don't, and you don't have to, like, force everything into the practice frame, but then, like, if you can get your social needs met through the practice, that's the support. If you can figure out how to enjoy the practice, that's the support. If you can, feel like you're having a positive impact on others and get those needs met through the practice, and it's just all different ways of buttressing and supporting the practice. That's just the way I would look at it.
Could I just ask a question to Nicholas? Do you have any tips for creating a meditation group? Where do you do that? Like,
Yeah,
how did you go about it?
Yeah, so we just posted, well, I met a few people interested in meditation at a day-long The Mind Illuminated retreat in Portland. So, like, probably a good way to start is find people in an existing group instead of starting a group from scratch. So yeah, just do some research. But we ended up posting our group on meetup.com, which is, made for that kind of thing, for finding a group of people who are similarly interested in the topic. And it's worked really well. And lots of new people have come in, and it's been, yeah, just like a perfect source. Like, our community is really growing in a totally organic way without any marketing efforts on our part. So yeah, it's been really great. But yeah, that'd be my recommendation, is like, find something that exists, make friends there, and if the format of that existing thing isn't ideal and you don't love it, then you can make your own. But there's really no need to, if you find a group that you like enough that checks all the boxes for you.
Cool, thank you. And also, I'm a little bit afraid that I'm derailing the entire class now, but I'm considering doing a Goenka retreat in about 2 months or so. And since it seems like there's a lot of people with a lot of experience in that here, I wondered if you have any tips for preparing and doing one of those retreats.
I'll go first, and then Nick, you can go. I would do it. How to prepare? Geez, I don't know. Just keep practicing. Be open to what they have to say. I would probably recommend doing their practices that they recommend. I mean, some people are really. Often I went and did going for retreats, and I would just do a practice that I was already doing, and I just going there for the container, which is big time for Botan, a big time no. But I would recommend going and doing the practice that they recommend. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I would go and just follow their instructions. The instructions are really good. I would not buy into the more rigid, strict hierarchical stuff, or maybe buy into it for a while, but not forever. But yeah, just go and follow the instructions and follow the timetable and do your best. It is intense. It'll kick your ass. I think the worst part about it is the restrictions on movement, and they don't teach you how to have a posture that can maintain meditation for that long. So, like, most of my Goenka retreats were just an extreme pain in my back with knots, and then, like, learning some yoga and doing some self massage to keep my to, like, undo some of the knots really helped. And then after, like, on probably my 5th retreat, the pain went away, and it really um, made the meditation a lot more fruitful, because I wasn't just struggling in constant pain. But they're like, don't do yoga. I think that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, go into your room and stretch and work the knots out of your back, because just sitting up straight for that long every day is going to kick your ass, regardless of how good your meditation posture is. Also, like, sit up really high, put your knees below, put your knees down, so you can get the curve in your lower back. Like, I just wish they had taught me this shit for my first few retreats, because I wouldn't have, sat through so much pain. But other than that, yeah, go for it. They're great.
Yeah, I support that. And then I think another big problem with a Goenka retreat is it's very, very isolating, because like the teaching, the in-person teaching is very, very, very rote, extremely rote. And I didn't feel like I was being connected with or understood as a person, which at a certain level of practice, it's like, okay, you can kind of handle that. But at the beginning, it's, this is a complete overstatement, but it's like almost kind of dehumanizing, because they just tell you what to do. You're supposed to do it. And then you get asked like, can you feel sensation? Good. No, this, blah, blah, blah. And so you don't feel like heard or kind of validated. So like, you know, and now this is another thing that they recommend against, but I would take like a notebook, and hopefully you have like an individual room, or if not, you can go to the toilet and just like write down your ideas and like kind of self-normalize, self-validate your experience, because there's going to be a lot of crazy stuff coming up in the mind that I didn't feel comfortable discussing with teachers. And like I remember one time, I don't know, it was probably like my fourth Goenka retreat, on like day 7 and day 9. I was like, I felt like I was having like for real psychiatric issues that could have probably been like worked through in all of 10 minutes of like, no, this is cool. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's cool. No, yeah, you're fine. And like, oh, this is what you're feeling. Okay, yeah, yeah. But then like that was not available whatsoever, because they just have this stern, like, can you feel sensation? And like, that's kind of approximately it.
I would reflect that 100%. That was exactly my experience, and that's what caused me to leave the tradition, was like having really intense experiences, going to the assistant teacher, trying to get some validation, and then just being, it's impermanent, just keep going, you know, like the only responses they were really able to give were repetitions of the things that you had heard in the video, and not any actual personalized understanding and like, you know, trying to connect with you on a human level. And I similarly like had a huge mental breakdown on one of the retreats, and like when it was that bad, then and I was like crying and breaking down, then finally like that like softened the teacher and humanized them to me a little bit, and then they were very friendly and comforting and soothing. So that was helpful, but it was on day 9 and I was like trying to leave the retreat. It was horrible. So yeah, it can be intense.
Yeah, I guess to reiterate it in like attachment theory terms, they do not attune to you whatsoever, which actually is, in my opinion, malpractice on the part of a meditation teacher. And I'd double down on that statement. Okay. All right, I guess we'll get going. All right, let's see here. You know, this is obviously the last class in this series. I'll do more classes. It's a little bit up in the air right now. I'll probably do some more kind of inquiry and open awareness oriented practices, but we'll see. I do have a unified mindfulness class, and I'm going to be like an 8-week unified mindfulness class that I will be teaching. It's totally like a beginner's class, but if you feel like participating and just reviewing that material, you can. I think I maybe already said this. It's 8 weeks. I'll just put it into the chat real briefly. Here we go. So feel free to sign up for that if you're interested. And then, you know, just you can come when you want and don't come when you don't want. So that's there. What else?
Do you have any information about how we can donate to you continuing to do these classes?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for asking that, Nick. Yes. Yeah. Let me get my link to my donation thing. I can make a little bit of a spiel on that. So this is what I do for a living. Feel free to make a donation. These classes are free. Like they're really 100% free. So don't feel any pressure to donate either. But if you want to, you can. All right. Let's see here.